Thank you again so much, everybody from Parmarth. Because Arielle is such an expert on love, I thought we'd start by asking her, how did you become such an expert on love?
Well, they say that what is it? What's the word for it? Is something's the mother of invention, desperation,
Necessity.
necessity and desperation. So, so becoming a love expert was never on my to-do list ever. And what happened was I was a first-time bride at 44. I had woken up one morning when I was 43 and I was in bed looking for my 25-pound cat. And I had my eyes closed and I was feeling around the bed and my big fat cat wasn't there. And in that moment, I had this thought, which was basically, oh no, I forgot to get married. I became aware that my whole life was about this 25-pound cat in my business. So I got out of bed and I decided to make a list of all the prayers and processes and rituals I had done over the years to build my business. I had this ridiculously successful PR firm and I did book publicity for Deepak Chopra, Wayne Dyer, Marianne Williamson, Don Miguel Ruiz, Neil Donald Walsh, Gary Zucker, everybody in the field. Oh, that looks like my cat. And so I made this 9-page list and then I did everything on my list. And within a year, I manifested my soulmate, who, Laura, you know him. He's perfect. He really is. We've been together 26 years now. He's absolutely amazing. So we got married. We had 3 weddings over one summer, a year after we met. And soon after we got married, I had this really horrific discovery, which was I had no partnership skills. I had absolutely no idea how to be a good partner. In fact, the thing that I most excelled at was being the boss. And I had married an alpha male. And being the boss with an alpha male doesn't work. And it soon became really clear to me that yes, I had manifested my soulmate, this amazing guy who exceeded all my expectations. And I was on the verge of blowing it. I just didn't know what to do. And I didn't know what I didn't know. I was just a very overbearing, bossy, take charge, get shit done kind of person. And it wasn't working. So I became a student of love. That became my mission. I had found love. Now, how am I going to keep love? And I became a very good student and I studied with all the masters. In fact, over the course of this last 26 years, I have interviewed the 200 top love, relationship, and marriage experts. And I have taken away everything that I learned and applied it to my own marriage, and it's mostly worked. So how did I become this expert? I wasn't planning it. I was having a really good time running this big business. But after 9/11, I wasn't having such a good time doing it anymore. In fact, I started to really be, I would say I was pretty miserable. The media was no longer interested in self-help and spirituality authors, my entire collection of clients. So I decided just to shut it down. And soon after I shut it down, I gave a little talk on a cruise ship. My sister had 200 of her coaches on a cruise ship. And she said, Arielle, come up here. Tell everybody how you manifested your soulmate. So I did this impromptu 45-minute talk. And when it was over, 200 people came racing towards me, screaming, I've got to have that book. I've got to have that book. So I ended up writing this book called The Soulmate Secret, Manifest the Love of Your Life with the Law of Attraction. And I thought, okay, I wrote the book. Anybody who wants to know what I did, they can do what I did. It's in the book. What I never expected was I suddenly started getting calls from Omega Institute and Esalen and Deepak Chopra's Center and all these places said, oh, we want you to come teach a course on how to manifest a soulmate. So it turns out, even though I'd never taught anything in my life, I actually loved teaching people about love. And before I knew it, I had this whole new career and people labeled me a love expert. Now, I still think that's hysterically funny. Given my background, I'm still learning every single day what love is. And one of the most interesting things to me is that not only did I not know what love is, but all the women who come to me looking for love, they don't know what love is.
Mhm.
Most people are really, okay, I won't curse, but they're really effed up when it comes to love because we've been trained by Disney and fairy tales that romantic love is what love is. Now,
Mhm.
listen, romantic love is really a great drug high. It's really fun, but it has nothing to do with what real mature adult love is all about. So when Sadhvi said, "Oh, why don't you come give a talk?" And it's like, well, yes, but I'm not doing it alone because I don't really know as much as you would think I would know. I said, I'm only going to do it if Laura will do it with me. So this is how we got here today. So we can have a dialogue and really exchange ideas and share them with you about what love really is. I'm going to leave you with one last thought here. I was doing some research this week and I discovered in Sanskrit, there are 294 words for love. In Persian, there's 96 words for love. In Greek, there are only 3 words. And in English, we have one. That's
Mhm.
it. We've got one, and all of us have a different idea what it is.
Mhm.
So, am I a love expert? You know, I know a lot of good stuff and I'm happy to share it, but I'm no astrophysicist. I can't tell you how the world was born.
Yeah. But you know what I love is that you're an acharya of love. So when I was studying yoga and I studied with Krishnamacharya's son, and he talked a lot about find an acharya. Find not necessarily the Buddha, because the Buddha hasn't lived your life. Buddha was born a Buddha. He didn't suffer. But find an acharya, one who's literally what I think you're saying is once you got married, you had to figure out how to do this thing. And you figured it out. So you're the one to follow because you know the pain that we may all be going through and we're seeking answers to, right? So that's a beautiful story. Now, you did sort of get close to it, but I wonder in your all of your studies, how do you now, what have you come to in terms of defining love? How do you define it?
Okay, so here's what love is not.
Yeah.
Love is not the state of being in love when it feels like champagne bubbles are going through your system and you just, are in this, if you've ever done the drug ecstasy, you're in that state all the time. But that's not love. That's your brain on drugs. That's your brain on oxytocin and dopamine and serotonin and adrenaline. And it
Yeah.
feels great. It's really fun most of the time. And it's nature's trick to get us to procreate. But when you're in that state, you're generally in that state with a stranger. You don't know this person. You've just met them, but you're
Mm.
having this shared drug high that's really fun. And then you're having sex, and then you're getting really bonded with them. And then you think, this is it. I've known this person for a million lifetimes. Nobody's got me like they have. Everything feels so good until it doesn't. So that's what love isn't. What I've learned, and this was really disappointing, and it took me a long time to come to grips with it. Love is a behavior. Love is a choice. Love is a decision. Love is a way of being. And yes, there are some good feelings that come and go with it from time to time. But when those feelings aren't there, it doesn't mean that you don't love them. And in fact, if you've been married long enough to somebody you call your soulmate and that you had these in love feelings with at one point, there will be days when you actually feel hate for them. And it doesn't mean that you don't love them. But our divorce rates are crazy high because when the feelings go away, we think it's over. Oh, yes, well, I love him or I love her, but I'm not in love with them anymore. And that is correct. You are not in love with them anymore. And there's a lot of levels on which, thank God, you're not in love with them anymore because real mature adult love is really an act of service, right? You want to be with somebody that you want to make them as happy as you would like to be. And at the same time, you're hoping that's reciprocated. And there's going to be a lot of misery involved. And it doesn't mean that you don't love them.
Mm.
So I don't want to bum you out too much, because there's a lot of great things about being married and having love in your life, but nobody ever really tells you that. And then you get all pissed off and disappointed when your fairy tale isn't coming true and you
Mhm.
want to run.
Yeah. So can we parse this a little bit? When you say that love is not, it's not a feeling, it's an action. It's not a feeling, it's an action. Is it also an energy? I always like to think that love is both a noun and a verb, and the verb
I,
is action.
yes,
But there's
yeah,
something also that feels like it's an absolute that we can tap into. Is that fair to say?
yeah. And let me give you what my definition of a soulmate is, because that's just like love. Soulmate's another one of those words. Everybody's got their own idea. So I believe that a soulmate is first and foremost somebody you can completely be yourself with, somebody with whom you share unconditional love. And when you look into their eyes, you have the experience of being home. And if you accept that definition, then the truth is you already have lots of soulmates. You know, it could be your parents, your kids, your siblings, your friends, your students, your coworkers, your cats, your dogs.
Right.
All, you know, you can have that experience. So the energy is there. When I stare into the eyes of my cat, if that's not love, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
Right? I've met your dog. Your dog's like one of the greatest lovers I've ever met. He just like,
Yeah. That's
right?
right. Yeah.
So yes, love is also an energy.
It's an energy. So let's talk about how, because then when we think of love as an energy and as an act, and certainly an act of service, then we don't really need anyone else. So we could talk about love or marriage, right, as a spiritual practice, but we could also be, it seems like what you're saying is we could be not married and still celebrating love.
Yeah, I don't think everybody needs to be married. If it's a desire that you have, if you want to share your life with another, then do it. And you can also do that with friends. You know,
Mm.
I mean the definition of marriage is changing so rapidly right now. My head is spinning. I mean, just yesterday I read an article in the New York Times about single polyamory. Wrap your head around that one, you
Mm.
know. There's just so many ways you can do it. So you can decide. For me, I definitely wanted to get married. I wanted to live with somebody 24/7. I wanted to be with somebody that I knew would take a bullet for me. That would be my best friend, my biggest cheerleader, you know, lift me up on my bad days and celebrate with me on my good days.
Mhm.
And, you know, to keep that going for 26 years requires attention. And that's been the hardest part for me, because I'm an oldest child. It's all about me kind of person. You know, I'm really interested in what's going on in my head. And I'm really only interested in what's going on in Brian's head, because I've learned that's how you keep the relationship going. I actually had to train myself how to listen, because I was such a bad listener. You know, thank God for the Gottmans. I don't know if you guys know who John Gottman is, but he is the god of marriage research. He has the marriage lab at the University of Washington in Seattle. He's done research for over 50 years, and he can now observe a couple for 15 minutes. And
Mm.
at the end of 15 minutes, he can tell you with 95% accuracy whether or not they'll still be married in 3 years by the way they look at each other and communicate.
Wow.
You know, so this stuff is both an art and a science, and I needed to learn both. Did
Mm.
you freeze, Laura? Are you
I needed to learn both. Is Gottman the one who made that beautiful quote that you sometimes share about we're not looking for perfect love, but to love perfectly
No,
and
no,
imperfectly?
that is, oh God, what's his name? So the quote is, we come to love not looking for a perfect person, but learning how to love an imperfect person perfectly. And
Mm.
that's by Sam Keen. And that is absolute. I'll say it again for those of you who want to write it down. We come to love not to find a perfect person, but to learn to love an imperfect person perfectly. And that's Sam Keen. And I just love that, because I know I'm imperfect. all of you know you're imperfect. We're not going to get somebody who's perfect, but we
Yeah.
need to love them perfectly, because my understanding and my observation has been all human beings basically want the same thing. We want to be with people with whom we feel emotionally and physically safe, and we want to be accepted for exactly who we are, warts
Mhm.
and all, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah. That's what I love about what you said. And that's exactly what I was thinking is thank God, because it works both ways. Thank God that we might find somebody who can perfectly love us despite our imperfections. Yeah. And isn't that how, it's parental love, right? We would hope. Joseph Campbell said something about how children are so lovable because of their imperfections, right? Children are so lovable because they're not fully perfect. They're not grown yet. They're all kinds of things. And that's part of what makes someone lovable is their humanness.
Yeah.
Is their humanness. Yeah, that's very beautiful. Thank you. So how do we cultivate this? How do we cultivate the art of love?
It's a daily practice. You have to choose every day. How can I be more loving to myself and others? What can I do in this moment to give more? My favorite line in A Course in Miracles says that the only thing that can be missing in any situation is that which we are not giving.
Hmm.
Only thing that can be missing in any
Hmm.
situation is that which we are not giving. So if your complaint is, I don't have enough love in my life, the cure is give more love to yourself and others. And sometimes those are just anonymous acts of service.
Hmm. I love that. May I share what you wrote recently? What spurred us to have this conversation?
Sure.
So recently, everybody listening, Arielle has a beautiful newsletter if you want to sign up for it. And recently, she sent out an email, and at the very bottom of it, it's a quote from a rabbi who says something about what is prayer. And he says, in Judaism, prayer is the way to connect as an opportunity to put yourself on the same wavelength as the blessing. The answer is already there. It's just, dear God, period. It's about acknowledging that everything and every moment is a reflection of God's inner existence. The moment I recognize that I don't need anything, that God doesn't need, I don't need. Here's what I love so much. What is required is to find in my soul, what am I needed for? And I feel like that's what you're saying, not what, and again, I was sort of quoting John Kennedy, ask not what your country can do for you, but ask not what love can do for you, but what can you do for love, right? What am I needed for in my soul? What is the answer?
Yeah, and that's part of the stuff that pissed me off, because I I was this total romantic. Oh, I'm going to manifest my soulmate, and then he's going to be like the genie in the bottle. He's going to intuitively know how to make me happy, and his whole life is going to be devoted to making me happy. And I was like 44 and having these thoughts. I didn't know any better, and I on the day that we met, I said to him, I don't want to have any children, because I always knew I didn't want to have kids. And I thought, I don't know his last name, but he's kind of cute. So let's get this out of the way quickly. And what, and one of the reasons I never wanted to have any children was because I didn't want to have to be responsible for somebody else's well-being. The thought of having to take care of somebody else. And it's so that's not how it turned out. It was Brian just walked in the door, actually. 5 years ago, he was at the grocery store shopping and he face planted in the blueberries. He had a
Ah,
stroke. He came through it beautifully, but it was such a deep lesson for me about how to be more loving, how to be more nurturing, how to be more caring.
yeah.
So even though I thought I was setting up this plan where I'll never have to do this, surprise. And it turned out that I'm actually pretty good at it. And it was not the struggle that I thought it would be. like just thinking about it in the future. Oh my God, I have to take care of somebody.
Mhm.
It was an entirely different experience.
Mhm. I think that's interesting that love doesn't it's not the idealism, that's not the romance of the movies, but I think love can still bring you to your knees. And I think, at least in my experience, it's when love brings you to your knees and you still choose love, then you know it's love. Then you know it's true love.
Yeah.
It's gonna teach you things, isn't it? I find it's gonna break you open.
Well, Harville Hendricks says that the purpose of getting married and taking sacred vows is to create a sacred container for the relationship so that there's a safe place for all your childhood wounds to come up into for healing.
Mhm.
And that marriage is actually the truest, hardest spiritual path there is.
Yeah.
And if I had learned that before I got married, I might have chosen just to live together, because it doesn't happen if you're just living together. You could be in a committed relationship living with somebody, but if you haven't taken sacred vows, the really hard stuff doesn't come up. And I've talked to Harville about this. I've interviewed him multiple times, and I said, "Why is that?" And he said, "We don't have the hard research to explain it yet." He said, "But my theory is that when you're just living with somebody, there's a part of your brain that knows you can leave at any time. So it's
Yeah.
not safe for you to bring up all the deepest, darkest core wounds. But once you've taken those vows and you've told God and the universe and everybody else, I'm standing for this person,
Mhm.
that's when the shit hits the fan."
And in my first marriage, I lived with him for a year or so, and then we got married. And you'd think there'd be no difference. We were already living together. And yet there was such a difference, and it was exactly that. I felt so safe. I felt so grounded. I felt like I belonged. It was a really interesting shift, even though that's a marriage that didn't last. But it was I think it's something sort of animal in us. We've got our tribe now, and we're okay.
Well, lots of people have starter marriages, and one of the other beliefs that I've come to is that you can be with somebody that in every cell of your body is your soulmate, and it doesn't mean it's going to last forever. That some soulmate relationships come with an expiration date,
Hmm. Hmm.
and it doesn't mean that they're still not your soulmate because you're not limited to just one. It's just that the nature has changed,
Hmm.
and it will be in your highest and best good to move on, even if it doesn't feel like that in the moment.
We have a great question from Anupam, and I'd like to really go to that later, if that's all right with you. Before we go there, I'd like to ask Arielle a little bit about the other side of relationship. You recently wrote a fabulous book called The Love Thief. And, just because I think it is important that also we are safe and, as we've been talking about, safe and protected. Can you talk to us about how we know when it's love versus, not healthy?
Oh, God, that's such a big question. So people always say to me, how do I know if they're my soulmate? One way to know is that you've spent a minimum of 1 year with them in an exclusive relationship. You've met all their family and friends. They've met all your family friends. You can count on them to do what they say they're going to do and to mean what they say, that they're a responsible, grounded human being, that they have financial responsibility, that you have connection, compatibility, chemistry, and most importantly, a shared vision for the future. Now, it doesn't mean you're going to do everything together all the time, but you have a shared vision. We're going to live together. We're going to have children. We're not going to have children. We're going to spend Christmas with your parents and Thanksgiving with my parents. Just the big stuff. You have this shared vision. We're both really interested in family. We both hate our families and nobody's going to hear from us again. It doesn't matter. There's no right and wrong. It's just that you share this vision for your future. And if you have all of those pieces in place, then you've got a pretty good chance of it.
Mm.
But timing's really important. This whole love at first sight, getting swept away by your feelings, some toxic narcissist whispering in your ear, "I've been waiting for you all my life, run away with me. Let's go to Vegas and get married today." that stuff doesn't work.
Yeah. So if it's too good to be true, if
It
it feels
is.
that way, yeah.
Yeah.
Can you give us those points again? These are great
Okay, so
points.
you need connection,
One, connection.
compatibility, clear communication, some chemistry, although surprisingly, chemistry is not as important as you would think, shared vision for the future. You've been together for at least 1 year, met their family and friends, and vice versa. You're both financially responsible. There's no active addiction. Don't marry anybody with an active addiction, no matter how many meetings they're going to, unless they've been sober for a long time. That's a red flag. You just stuff you got to know. So think of it this way. Uh, does work count as an addiction? I don't know the answer to that question. Addiction, I'm not an addiction specialist. I just know that when somebody's not in their right, love is hard enough, but to be with when one half of the equation is not in their right mind, it's almost impossible.
Mhm. And if you join AA, they always say wait a year before you get into relationships so that your mind can can become clear again. So
Yes.
that you're no longer driven by the addict, the part of the brain that is chemically addicted. So that's brilliant. Okay. So
So
what about,
the one last thing I was going to say about that is that since, choosing to marry somebody is the biggest, most important decision of your life, don't rush it, and if the red flags come up, learn to ask clarifying questions. If somebody says something to you and you have a physical, emotional reaction to it, don't let it just go. Just say, hey, wait a second. I think I just heard you say ABC. Did I hear you correctly? That's not confrontational. It's not mean. You're just asking, did you say that? If
Mhm,
somebody just used the N word in front of you, you
mhm.
don't want to just let that go.
Do you know what? I feel like that could be one of the tests to make sure that you are in a relationship with somebody who's healthy. Because if somebody has a problem with that question, I have personally, I'm just going to share with everyone, been in relationship with somebody with narcissistic personality disorder. And so if I would say something like that in a nice and gentle tone, it would be, "Oh," and I would be torn to shreds because you don't challenge somebody with NPD. You don't challenge people who are unhealthy. So I think that's a really great thing that you just said. You ought to be able to talk about, and you in that example, you didn't even say anything about how you feel. You just start checking. Did you say this?
Yeah.
This is what I think I heard.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
Brent.
and you can use that for everything because you remember the telephone game?
Yeah.
And everybody's hearing, like my husband likes to say, we all live in our own private Idaho. Everybody's hearing something different through a different filter. You need to get clarification. I remember the first Indian guru I ever went to. I was like 17 years old, and somebody said, "Oh, come to Cliff's house. There's this Indian guru who's going to be talking." And he looks, long gray hair, long beard, and had an accent, and I was, so exotic. I'd never seen somebody like that in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And he kept saying the same thing over and over again. And what I heard him saying was, you have to be careful about your hunger. Don't be hungry. And I just like, finally, I raised my hand. I said, what's wrong with being hungry? We've got to eat. And he burst out laughing. And he said, I didn't say hunger. I said anger. I was hearing anger is hunger, and that's how we talk to each other. You're saying one thing, I'm hearing something else. I'm getting pissed off when all I could have done is stop for a second. Let me see if I've got this right. Is that
Mhm,
what you meant?
mhm. And we're going to stop in the name of love. Stop in the name. Okay, that's so beautiful. I think that's so important what you said for our whole lives, for everybody's life, is that we're all hearing things differently. We're all perceiving things differently. I spoke earlier about Ayurveda, and Ayurveda is all about perceiving the world through our five senses, and each sense relates to one of the five elements. And and part of Ayurveda is to sharpen these senses so we have greater clarity, so that we're perceiving with greater truth, and part of that might be just stopping and asking the question, is that what you actually said? Or is that actually what you meant?
Right.
Beautiful.
Clarifying questions, total lifesaver, relationship saver.
Beautiful. How does any of this have to do with spirituality?
Well, first, let's define what is spirituality. Because if you're in Beverly Hills and you ask one of the Beverly Hills housewives, are you spiritual? She would say to you, oh, well, you bet I'm spiritual. I wake up every morning and I have my green drink, and then I go to hot yoga, and then I go to Erewhon and I get some gluten-free, vegan, blah, 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 blah. And then later on, I go and do my soul cycle, and work out before I go shopping at Barney's. And I read at least one spiritual book a day. Sometimes it's Deepak Chopra, somebody, sometimes it's the Four Agreements. So yes, I'm spiritual. So depending where you are, what's spiritual? That's what passes for spirituality in Beverly Hills. For me, people always say to me, "Oh, you're so spiritual." And I say to them, well, maybe I am, but not in the ways you think. I don't do yoga. I don't meditate. I do have practices to calm my system down, but I don't really consider myself that spiritual unless I'm doing seva. Because for me, spirituality is being open-hearted, caring, giving, and compassionate. To me is what spirituality is. But everybody's got their own ideas. I know some people think I used to coach women about dating and they'd say, well, I'm not dating a guy unless he meditates. And
Mhm.
it's like, well, thank God Brian didn't have that rule, or we wouldn't be together for 26 years. He meditates, I don't. And there have been lots of meditation teachers who have rape charges against them. So just because somebody meditates doesn't give them a pass on good behavior. So, I'm
Mhm.
really curious, what is your definition of spirituality?
My definition of spirituality, well, I think it's connecting to spirit, if we're connecting, seeking to connect to source. And I think you make a really important point that you might do it through practices that help you, as you said, balance or calm your nervous system. And maybe taking a deep breath in that moment, you feel connected to space element, or I know you look over the ocean where you live. I think all of those are, very simple practices. I even think that a lot of the spiritual practices we do bring us full circle back to the beginning, where we're just aware, awake, alive in the world, right? And able to be fully present to what it is without having to do yoga or put our feet behind our head or do even all these fancy breath practices. I think it's about bringing us home to ourselves.
Yeah, that's a good way, bringing us home to ourselves. I think that really works for me. I love that.
Yeah. So we can do a practice, but there are some questions. We can do some practices to bring people closer to their love nature. And you mentioned the Four Agreements, which is by Don Miguel Ruiz, and I studied with him. I spent a lot of time with him years ago, decades ago. And there's a beautiful story about him. So when he first started teaching, he had this small group of people he called apprentices. So his students he called apprentices, and they were all in Santa Fe at the time. And one of the persons who became my teacher is called Rita. She felt like she and Don Miguel were getting very close. She felt a lot of love from him, a lot of affection from him, a lot of attention from him. And then one day it was just over. And after about 6 months, she said, "Hey, what happened? I thought maybe we were falling in love. I was feeling a lot of love from you." And he said, "Yes, I wanted you to see that it doesn't come from me. I wanted you to know that that love that you were feeling is yours. It's always yours. And it has nothing to do with me." It's quite a beautiful, I think, reminder
Yeah,
that
I,
love.
I used to work with him as well, on some of his books and stuff. And Miguel is also polygamous. So he has multiple wives and multiple girlfriends at the same time. Uh, and and it's weird as hell when you're in the room with four of them.
Mhm, mhm,
It's really strange. But the Four Agreements, I think, are great teachings. he's a fascinating human being. He's totally adorable and yummy. But,
Mhm.
unless you want to share your mate with a bunch of other chicks, I don't know.
Yeah, we're on the same page with that. But just to remember that love is within us and it doesn't come from someone else. And what we're seeking perhaps in a relationship is to both of us be love, whole and complete as we are, but maybe vibrating on that same wavelength so we can share the beauty and joy of life. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I actually believe that we are all personally responsible for our own happiness. And
Mhm.
if you end up with a partner, that's the icing on the cake. But
Yeah.
whether they're in your life or not in your life, you are solely responsible for your own happiness and well-being. And it's great to have a partner, and you can do it without one.
Yeah, totally. Can sometimes I dream that one day when if I'm alone again, that I would live with all of my best friends. And that would be its own love fest. So Cecile is asking if you have experience with the five love languages.
Yes, I love the five love languages. So the languages are, let's see if I can remember them. Touch, words of affirmation, gifts, acts of service, and I think there's one more that I can't think of right now. But so the purpose of the love languages is to know what your two main love languages are. What are the things that make you feel most loved? But more importantly, to understand what your partners are. Because when we give to another, we tend to give people what it is we want. All right. Like I have this friend who's always gifts is my least of all the love languages. I'm just not interested in gifts, but she's always giving me gifts. And every gift I get is something that is so her. So it's a color that would look good on her, but would never look good on me. It's an item she would always wear that I would never wear. So love languages, super easy. You go online, Google 5 love languages quiz. It's free, easy to understand. You don't need to read the book. Um, but the thing that I learned about the love language is that in kindergarten, I was taught the golden rule. The golden rule is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Well, it turns out the golden rule sucks when it comes to relationships. You do not want to practice the golden rule. You want to practice the platinum rule. And the platinum rule is do unto other as they want to be done unto.
Great.
And that's where knowing their love language is really helpful. Because if
Mhm.
you're with somebody who's all about gifts and acts of service, and they could care less about physical touch and words of affirmation, you guys are on different pages. And there's no one love language is better than the other. There just isn't. It's just about if you want to be contributing to your partner's life, contribute in the way that makes them feel the most seen, heard, loved, and cared for.
Yeah. Another love expert who did you ever meet Chuck Spezzano?
No, what a great
That
name,
was
though.
way, way back. But I remember him saying, if you want to know what a person wants, look at what they give.
Yes. Yes.
Look at what they give. Yeah. Oh, and Darcy writes, the fifth is time spent together. That's my love
Right.
language. I want to be hanging out together. What about yours?
They're changing. In fact, I'm just writing about it right now because they used to be words of affirmation and touch, and now now they're changing. They're so much more practical now. It's like, uh, I've got arthritis in my hands. There's a lot of things I can't do. It's like I can't get my jewelry on and off. If Brian puts a necklace on for me, that like makes my day.
Mhm.
So I would say acts of service is much more important to me uh, than it used to be. So they're changing. And I used to really like that he would take the car to get washed once a week and bring me home flowers because there was a flower shop at the car wash. Well, he hasn't done that in about 5 years now for all kinds of reasons. And it's like, hey, I really don't want to be the person who goes to the car wash and I don't want to buy my own flowers. So I have
Mhm.
to figure out how to negotiate that one.
So this is beautiful what you just touched on, the acts of service, because also Anupam says that in that case, helping wait, where is it? Helping the needy is the best form of love. My definition is the quote here. And yeah, and you just said acts of service and charity, this word, caritas, is another word for love. So what do you think about that? Can we go and feed the hungry, home the homeless?
If it fills you up,
Mhm,
that's the whole thing. Is it, what kind of service giving fills you up? What
mhm,
I've discovered over the last couple of years is I have this ability to connect people. Laura, you tell me, oh, I'm really interested in such and such. And a bell goes off in my head. It's like, oh, well, then she needs to meet so and so because they're going to, glass highway her exactly to where she needs to go. I like to do that. And I like to do it anonymously. That
mm,
like lights me up more than anything.
mm,
So, what's the act of service? I remember doing Save at one of Amaji's events once, feeding people, and I was just pissed off the whole time. It's like, this
mm,
is such a stupid use of my time. Of all the talents that I have, they want me putting, dal on a plate, I was
mm.
like really annoyed. Like they should have me in charge of the VIPs or something. I went into so much judgment about how I was doing Save. I probably flunked that day. I don't know. But yeah, I'd say whatever lights you up.
Whatever lights you up is great. The other
Yeah.
thing about taking care of strangers, which I love that you two couple people have written that and doing acts of service in general, doing Save at the Ashram, for instance, as Michaela has done a lot of, can be very humbling. But I still find that being married to somebody, it's harder to do acts of service for someone you live with and to do it with from that place in your heart that is fully loving, right? Because there are days where that person doesn't treat, I mean, well, you're taking
Yeah,
care
no,
of,
listen. We're at that age where our
yeah.
spouses get grumpy. They get impatient and grumpy. And
Well, and
it's
we had
some
to
of it's
hear human beings say,
biology,
yeah,
they're in pain, they're not feeling good.
right, exactly.
Sometimes I just want to like goes that song that show the honeymoons to the moon, Alice. You know.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, no, it's you just have to understand, like, if it were me, how would I be feeling? It
Mhm.
requires a lot more introspection than it used to.
I also find, and I think I was talking about this earlier in the Ayurveda portion, that it also takes just a commitment to it. Doesn't matter how that person's showing up, this is how I want to show up, and I'm committed to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, beautiful. Okay, we've got about 15 minutes left, and I thought we could do um, maybe a little bit of a self-exploration as well as open it to Q&A. Do you want to do
I'm
that?
up for whatever makes sense. I actually you had told me a few words about love that I didn't understand, so I want to ask you what they mean. So what is prema?
Ah, well, I thought maybe we could share that with everyone as a sort of mantra that you can take with you as a little gift. If one of your five languages is gifts, here's your gift. um, Prema is a beautiful word, and there's a beautiful mantra that's aham prema, and it's I am love. I am the act of love. I am the noun of love and the verb of love. I am love, whole and complete unto myself, and I am love, sharing that energy with the world. Aham. Aham is a beautiful Sanskrit word. It's the alpha and the omega. It's the beginning and the end of the Sanskrit alphabet. Aham, I am, it's translated as, but it's like I am one with the all that is. And all of the possibilities of sound vibration moving through me with this one aham. Aham. So if everybody wants to just try saying that, aham,
Aham.
and feel how beautiful that feels to say it. Aham. Very much the sound of the heart. And then prema. And if you say it long, prema, it's like prayers to the mother, right? Om prema. Again, sounds of the heart. The ah is a vibration of the heart. So aham prema, prema. Very much feels like your heart is vibrating in a more and more expansive way. Aham prema. I am love, and I am grounded in that.
Mm, I love that.
Yeah. Hi, Janine. Yeah, I think the other word that I put up there was agape,
Yeah.
and that's that idea of brotherly love or sisterly love or He ain't heavy, he's my brother. And that feeling of, I think when we choose to see other human beings in their humanity. I was on a plane yesterday with somebody who's flying from Colombia to New York City, and he showed me his diploma. He's just graduated with a master's in business administration, and he's flying to New York for work. He's flying from San Diego. Why? Because he just came across the border in San Diego, where he was arrested and given papers to show up in court in June. That's what happens now if you come across the border. We've thrown it into our court systems. But the guy on the other side kind of pulled away as he heard about this. And I thought it's so interesting that this man who's 22, beautiful and sweet, he's a human being. Whether we should have the border, that's not a political thing. What's going on at our border, I don't know how to figure it out. But what I was just experiencing was the humanity of somebody coming looking for work because where he's come from, there's no work. And just to be able to sit and listen to him and not worry if he's upholding my beliefs or not. You know, I just was sitting listening to him, realizing, wow, this is humanity in my face. And for this moment, I can't have opinions or beliefs or a political idea or about policy. Right now, it's about a human being who's reached out to me. Actually, the way we started talking is because I was looking for a cord and that I didn't pack. And he just knew it and he just offered it to me. Didn't speak English. And it was just this beautiful moment of we're not different. We're all, this is the number one, I feel like, teaching of yoga. Vasudev Kutumbakam, we are all one family. We belong to one another. Let's see what we can do to take care of each other. And it's so human, you know, for most of our history, we've been tribal. We lived in small family clans. In our whole life, we never knew more than 100 people. And so we were trained to think outsider is not safe. You look at the apes, if an outsider comes from another clan of apes, this one clan will destroy that ape who's trying to get in. Dead, destroy. And we're like 98, what is it, percent same as the apes, right? And so we still have a lot of that. And it takes a lot of intention. It takes a lot of discipline to say, of course, I'm going to take care of myself. Of course, everybody needs to take care of themselves. Nobody should be ever hurt or unsafe. But in the situation where you are safe, I think it's really important. I think it really is an act of love to see other human beings' humanity and to try to find something in them that mirrors something in you, to dissolve the walls of separation and remember our oneness. I find that's, to me, the expression and experience of love that I'm most seeking. So. Okay, are we good?
I'm good.
So any other questions? Let's open it up for questions then. Anupam, favorite shloka, Prem related. Thank you. I wonder if you can write that in English for the rest of us. Agape, beautiful word, agape. Possible to spell, oh, thank you, and Carol did that. Any other questions? Does anybody want to unmute and ask a question? Yeah, Carol, I do the same. It's funny. We find humor in it. Humor is a great medicine, by the way, for pitta. So anybody feeling grumpy or angry or uptight or too controlling, just make a joke. And usually that diffuses that energy quite
I'll tell
quickly.
you what our ongoing joke is. So Brian and I are both at the stage where our memories are really starting to fail. And we were sitting around one day trying to remember this name of this guy. Like we both knew who we were talking about, but we couldn't remember his name. And it was somebody we'd known 20 years ago, and we were just going crazy. And finally, I texted my friend Rita, and I said, and I described the guy, and she wrote back instantly, his name is Anshuman. And I was like, Anshuman, that's his name. And Brian's like, yes, Anshuman. And now every time we both can't remember something, we scream Anshuman. It's just like this ongoing thing because I know what he's trying to say. He knows what I'm trying to say, but it's just like Anshuman. We can't. And then, at 3 a.m, one of us will wake up and go, it was that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. Humor helps so much because it is funny. I mean, it's just like, it's on the tip of your tongue and it's gone.
And that's the beauty of a mature relationship, that you can laugh at the foibles, right?
Yeah.
And you can hold for each other like a safe space around that. to just be yourselves, like you said in the beginning. Yeah. Oh, okay. Any other questions?
A
You've
question.
got the love expert here.
Well, here's for anybody who's single and is not happy that they're single. Here's a little thing that you can do every day. Um, First, make a list. Make a list of all the people in your life that you love, that you know love you. And it needs to be like at least a dozen people. And then after you meditate or before you meditate, just close your eyes, drop your attention from your head down to your heart, and then take each name on your list and envision them inside of your heart, and then send them a wave of love. And just, have a wave of gratitude that you have this love in your life, whoever it is, and go through the list every single day. Because what you're doing is you're changing your frequency of love. You're filling your love bucket up, because it's not true that you don't have love in your life. You may not have the romantic partner you're seeking, but it's not true that you don't have love. So every time you're focused on the love you don't have, you're sending the universe a message to send you more of the feeling that love is missing. And then every time you get grateful for all the love you already have, you're actually filling yourself up and making your heart more magnetic to attract romantic love. So it's a daily love gratitude practice, and it's super easy, and everybody benefits. You're going to benefit, and all the people you're sending love to are going to benefit, and the world in general, which is vibrating at the frequency of death right now, will
Mhm.
benefit.
Mhm. I love that. It's beautiful. Thank you. And also keep yourselves safe. Part of loving you is nobody gets to ever in any way treat you unkindly. I think that's an important thing too, is take good care of yourself. Okay, beautiful.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
So I've been married 28 years and I'm divorced. I'm still friend with my ex who's married, and I'm very comfortable in my life with everything I'm doing. But it is true that sometimes I'd like to be in a committed relationship if I could find one, for the reason you said, because I think it's the most challenging situation that could help us evolve beyond where we are spiritually. But when I say things like that, and also I say that I'm not sure that I want to get married again, but I want a committed relationship, people tell me it might be because I don't really want it. But I don't think that's the case. But you made a strong point about being married. So if you could just talk a little bit about that.
At this point in your life, choose what it is your soul is most calling for. If your soul is calling for commitment without marriage, then do that.
Yeah.
These it's the problem with rules. They're guidelines. If you're 22 and you're going to choose someone to spend the rest of your life with, and you want to make it a spiritual path, then take sacred vows. But you've already done the marriage thing
Yeah.
for a very long time. And, maybe you don't even want to live with anybody. Let me just tell you a quick story. My stepmother called me a few years after my father died. And she said to me, I've already been divorced. That was her first husband. I'm now a widow. That was my dad. She said, but I'm only 55. I'm going to live a long time, and I don't want to spend my life alone. However, I'm a very busy person, and I only want to be with a man that I see on Tuesday nights and weekends, and we won't live together and we won't combine our money, and we'll go to Israel for 2 weeks every year to volunteer on an army base. That's what I want. And she's now celebrating her 27th year with Seth, and that's the exact relationship they have. And it totally works for both of them, because she sent the universe a very clear message of what she wanted. And they're just adorable together.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've been asking for what I want, and I'm very clear also. I don't want to live with somebody, but I could see them every day if that's what we want. But Yeah, but I guess I'm very busy with my life, and I'm finishing my second book, and I think maybe it has to do with me completing what I'm in the middle of doing, so that I don't get distracted. But I don't know, maybe I'm rationalizing.
Are you visible? Could somebody actually find you somewhere, or are you just busy writing? You know, because it's like the lottery. If you don't buy a ticket, you can't win. You
Right.
know, if you're not dating, if you're not visible, nobody can find you to ask you out.
Yeah, no, I did the online thing. I did everything, but I just never met someone that was the right person. And now I don't do that. It is true that I spend a lot of time doing my work, but I know a lot of people, but I don't. Yeah, it's true, and I know I'm not going in the world as much as I need to because I'm very busy with what I'm doing. But that's why I say that might be that now is not the right time for me because I have to finish what I started. It's really
I
important.
totally disagree.
Really.
I've written 12 books. Listen, once the book's finished, it's never finished. And you got to edit the book and then you got to market the book. I mean, it's never finished. And you're not writing 24 hours a day. You could find 30 minutes a day to go online and correspond with people and do some video chats. Just do this. Go to my website, soulmatesecret.com, and there's a free online dating guide. I'm not going to sell you anything. That's
So
how you properly date online. Most people say, oh, I tried it. It didn't work for me. Doesn't work for most people because they don't know how to do it correctly. So if you really want to be visible, read the online dating guide.
would it,
I love
you
that.
said soulmate what?
Soulmatesecret.com.
Soulmatesecret.com. Michaela,
I'll put
maybe.
it in the chat.
Okay. We just have 2 more minutes, so maybe we should bring this to conclusion. Cecile, will you put in the chat the name of the book you're writing so we can all look for it when it comes out?
Sure.
Okay. And I think you're going to meet somebody by this time next year. You'll come to next year's winter retreat with somebody that you're excited about. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. I think that's beautiful. I think this idea of really tapping in, we can all do it. We don't need to be single. Visualize in your heart everybody that you love, see their faces of love and see them radiating that love back at you. I think that's a beautiful way to start and end each day. And maybe just to feel that we've got all of us in this circle together in the heart. So thank you. Thank you so much to Arielle. Again, it's ariellefordalso.com, right?
Yeah,
And
Soulmate Secret or arielleford.com. It's all one site. It's just most people don't know how to spell my name, so Soulmate Secret tends to get you there easier.
okay, beautiful. And like she said, she's got 12 books, and the most recent one, The Love Thief, is a fictional tale, but very brilliant. And
half of it takes place at Parma. Just saying, it's in Rishikesh.
of course, half of it takes place at Parma, so we all have to read it. Good. Thank you. Thank you so much. Beautiful
Bye,
to be with you
everybody.
and share
Thank
this
you.
time. Thank you.